Hey everybody, Chris here, back by popular demand, maybe not so popular demand. I'm here with part 4 of my How I Got Here series. If you haven't seen part 1, 2, and 3, I'll link the playlist down below. So in my first 3 parts, I talk about my young life, college, how I got off to Colorado, um, and my first year in school in Colorado. If you want to know up till then, like I said, I'll link it down. It'll be at the end of the video, linked in the playlist. So I'll take it from there. My first year in college at Colorado, I went out to Gunnison, Colorado, Western State. I really wanted to go somewhere I could ski. I explained all that in the other video. And I was transferring as a junior from a 2-year college, Nassau Community in New York. So I got to Gunnison, and it was great. I was in Tamichi Hall. Went there without ever being in Colorado before. I bought a $900 Volkswagen Jetta from my friend Johnny, who just passed away actually a few weeks ago. I mentioned him in one of the videos I did back then. So I bought the Jetta, that he fixed up. He was the best mechanic I knew, the best 19, or I think we were 20 at the time, 20-year-old mechanic I knew. I bought the car from for $900, headed out west. First time driving out west, first time, my family, if you see how I got here, you'll see that we didn't take vacations. We couldn't afford it. That wasn't our family style. No family vacations. I'd never been out west, but it was awesome. I got out to Colorado, took a couple days to acclimate. I'd saved a bunch of money before I went out, so I rented a cabin in Gunnison till my dorm rooms opened. I went out like a week early. Actually, the first couple of days, I just mostly slept. I was, my school, Gunnison, is at nearly 8,000 feet above sea level. So I had never been at that altitude before, and I guess the way I reacted to it, all people react differently. Some people get what they call HAPE, high altitude pulmonary edema. I just got really sleepy and thirsty for a few days, and then I was good to go. Back then it was the early 90s. The weather was a little different in Colorado. Gunnison was the coldest valley in the lower 48 at the time. Yeah, and if you guys like my content, I just got over 500 subscribers. I'm trying to get that 1,000 subscriber threshold to get monetized, which would be great. I put a lot into these videos, a lot of time each week, not to mention it lives in my head rent-free making the videos. I'm always trying to think of different things to talk about, and there's a lot of thinking that goes into it. The first 3 I did, probably 30 to 50 people, maybe one of them 100 people watch them. Nobody watched them, so I'm pretty sure nobody's going to watch this video. But I did make notes, and I have kind of an idea of what I want to say. But some of my other videos, a lot more research and stuff needs to go into them. Anyway, if you like my stuff, go ahead and subscribe. Maybe someday I'll be monetized. I also have a new feature called Buy Me a Coffee, where for $5, if you want to support my channel, you could buy me a coffee on there. You could also sign up as a member on there. I have the membership level set up at $10 a month if you want to go on there and support me that way. That's great. And nobody has to buy me a coffee. I understand. If you want to just watch the videos, that's great too. Subscribe, hit the thumbs up so you get a notification when my new stuff comes up, and like my videos. That helps out a lot too, I guess. I don't know, I'm pretty new to this. This is my first few months as a YouTube influencer. But anyway, so I moved out to Colorado, high altitude. It was great. I was exploring the area, the mountains, incredible. I've never been anywhere like that. Gunnison, if you don't know, is in the heart of the Rocky Mountains. It's 30 minutes from Crested Butte, which is a premier ski area, which is one of the main reasons I wanted to go to Colorado. I just love skiing. If you watch my previous videos, I went to My girlfriend in high school, her parents took me skiing. I fell in love with it. It replaced like sports for me, like football and soccer and baseball and lacrosse, all sports I had played in the past. I love that feeling of getting out there and playing sports, and skiing replaced that for me, even though it's an individual sport. But I'm not going to lie, one of my main motivations for going to Colorado was to ski, not really academics, even though, that was important to me too. And I started out on a track academically at school to be a teacher. I always wanted to be a history teacher. So that's what I started doing. My history teacher was one of my favorite teachers in high school and one of my favorite classes, and it always came easy to me. I mean, history is just basically memorization, but it's also understanding cultures and stuff like that. So my first year at school, I'm 21, I think, or 22 when I got there, so I'm a little older than all the kids, but the rules are, and I think this still applies to most schools, if you go away to college, you have to live in the dorms. So I'm living in the dorms with, a bunch of 18-year-olds, and the RAs are more closer to my age. One of them was like a year or two older than me, and one of them was like a year younger than me. But so those are the guys that I gravitated to, and they gravitated to me, actually. We became pretty good friends, especially one of them, John Talbert. He became probably my best friend at school. Also, because I was a junior, I was able to get a suite, which is a bigger room at the end of the dorms where you have your own bathroom inside the room, which was great. I love that. And my roommate was this guy, Simon, from San Francisco. My first friend from the West Coast. He had long blonde hair. He was a typical San Francisco hippie. He turned me on to Stevie Ray Vaughan. I knew of Stevie Ray Vaughan, but he was like the biggest Stevie Ray Vaughan fan ever, and listened to Stevie Ray Vaughan around the clock. But because the dorms were overcrowded, they put this freshman kid, I can't even remember his name, it escapes me, in our room with us, even though it was a 2-person room. And Simon hated him. Simon was like intolerant of other people, especially people who were like kind of weak, which this kid was. He was young. He cried every night basically because he missed home. I can't remember where he was from. I think Kansas or something like that. But, he was a pretty pathetic character that we lived with, but he moved out after a while when they found a room for him and everything. So anyway, the semester went on. I was doing okay in school. I wasn't totally focused on school. I got a job in town at the local pizza bar as a bar back, because I needed to work. I wasn't one of these privileged kids that, just went to school and my parents paid for everything. We had the cafeteria there, which was great. That was another thing. I was like, before I went out, I was like, oh my God, I can, because, we grew up with no money in my house, me and my brother, and my 2 brothers actually. We're always fighting for seconds at dinner and stuff. But I was like, oh, this cafeteria, it's like endless food. And I probably packed on 20, 25 pounds that first year because I was just down there every meal eating pasta and cereal and whatever I could shove down my face. But I loved it. I loved having endless amounts of food. So that's a tangent, but I'll get back to the story now. So anyway, the dorms was cool. I did a lot of stuff with the people from the dorms. We played ice hockey on the pond in front of the school, the coldest valley in the lower 48. John Talbert, the RA, his major was communication, so he worked at the radio station in town. And because of my gruff voice and my New York accent, he talked me into auditioning for a radio show at the radio station. His friend was the manager. So boom, bang, bing, before you know it, I'm working at the radio station. I got a minor in communications. I have my own radio show every Friday night for 3 hours. It was like 9 to midnight. This is back in the early 90s. We had CDs and stuff, but we were still spinning vinyl. The radio station boasted having the biggest collection of vinyl on the western slope, which probably isn't that much of a boast because the western slope of Colorado, if you're familiar, doesn't have a ton of radio stations. But it was KWSB. I could still remember, my opening tagline, coming at you from KWSB in Gunnison, the coldest valley in the lower 48. At the time, I had very eclectic music taste, so I listened to all kinds of stuff. from like Diamici, if you know who that is, a Louisiana Cajun style band, to the Sex Pistols, Led Zeppelin, the Ramones, Debbie Harry, whatever. I grew up with my brother-in-law who was like from England and into punk, but all my friends were into Black Sabbath and Zeppelin, and I loved Elvis as a kid, so Elvis was in the mix, so I had this radio show on Friday nights where I played all these tunes, basically whatever I wanted. We had no format. I could play whatever I want. There was 16 churches in Gunnison, even though there was only, I think, 3,500 people that lived there. So I got dinged several times. There was this one lady we called the church lady who would just listen to my show just to catch me playing songs that had curse words in them, or messages that were anti-Christian or whatever. And I got suspended from the radio for a couple times. I got suspended for playing Jimmy Buffett's "Why Don't We Get Drunk and Screw" and the Clash, "Spanish Bombs," which one of the lines in it, you could barely hear it, but she heard it. It says, "He who F's nuns will later join the church." So yeah, I got dinged for that too. But it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. Actually, this YouTube channel kind of brings me back to my radio show on Friday nights. And, people would call in and, request music. We'd chat for a while. Yeah, it was a great experience. So anyway, that first year at school was great. I'd go skiing with my friends from school at Crescent Butte. I tried to get a job at Crescent Butte, but they turned me down. They said I didn't have any experience. I was not that great of a skier at the time. I was pretty good for a guy from New York, but not great. So Talbert, my RA, who got me the job at the radio show, it wasn't a job. It was kind of a class. You didn't get paid, but it did take up tons of time during the week, picking out your music, going there and practicing and stuff like that. But he worked at Monarch, which is like 45 minutes away. He drove this old Ford 70s pickup truck. He was from Minnesota. I think he got the truck from his parents. But he talked me and another kid in our dorm, Kurt Haugen, to get jobs at Monarch with him. So he took us up there. We all went up in his truck, went to the job fair, and Kurt and I got hired as kids ski instructors. And this was my first job at a ski area. I remember the outfits were purple and they were just awful looking, purple, and I can't remember what other color, but they were two-tone purple, that was just coming out of the 80s. So you had the 80s look to the outfits, and they were, gross to wear, but yeah, that's neither here nor there. I was just glad to get a free ski jacket and ski pants, which you usually get when you work in a ski area. So that's what we did for weekends all winters. Me, Kurt, and John would jump in his truck at 5 a.m. to be there at work at 7, on Saturdays and Sundays. I remember it was so cold sometimes, your skin would get stuck on the metal door handles of the old Ford truck, but that thing always started up. It always got us up there. Monarch Pass, if you're familiar, is one of the higher, more burly passes in Colorado. I mean, we loved working at the ski area. Then, not too long after getting the jobs at the ski area, it was midwinter or so, I think, start of the second semester, I started running into money problems. The ski area didn't pay anything. I mean, I basically made like $200 a month or $300 a month working there. And I had waited 6 months to go to school in Colorado so I could get in-state tuition. So I had moved there 6 months early. That's what the requirement was. You had to get a driver's license, get your voting card, and work there for 6 months. So I did that. I went 6 months early. Yeah, I guess I forgot that part of the story. I was there 6 months early, worked, got my in-state tuition, which everybody knows if you're paying in-state tuition, it's much less. So it was like a third or half the price what out-of-state tuition would have cost. But then after the first semester, they called me into the admissions office and they said, "Hey, we made a mistake, blah, blah, blah. It was days worth of stuff, but we shouldn't have gave you in-state tuition. You owe us $3,000.
What the fuck?
Which at the time was like, I don't have $3,000. I called my mother back in New York, and I just called her because she was always someone to give me reassurance and tell me that I could do whatever I wanted. And, if I just worked hard, I could do it. So I called her and she was like, well, no problem. We could borrow the money from your grandfather. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I just have never in my life been the type of guy that wanted to borrow money. I mean, I borrowed money for school from the government, but that's different. So I ended up having to drop out of school, and I didn't know what my next move was going to be. What am I going to do now? I've been out here a year. With the 6 months early, I moved out. I was out there a year, and I had no place to live once I got kicked out of the dorms. I didn't have my car anymore. That's another story. I'd loaned it to one of my dorm mates, Scott, who from Ohio. Good friend of mine, smoked pot all day, didn't do anything in school. But I loaned him the car anyway. He took his girlfriend up to Hartman Rocks, which is like a four-wheel area, and broke the oil pump on the car right off the bottom. But he decides he's going to drop out of school too, and him and I are going to find a place in Gunnison to rent and keep working at the ski area. So we couldn't find a place in Gunnison, so we went to the other side of the pass to Salida, and the Combi rep, which is gloves for skiing, said, hey, he worked at the ski area too, or he was there all the time. He was an older guy, probably in his 60s at the time, maybe my age now, I don't know, can't remember. But he was like, hey, I need somebody to house sit my house in Salida. Why don't you guys live there for the rest of the winter? So Kurt and I drop out of school, move into the Combi rep's house in Salida, Colorado, and that's what we're doing for the rest of the winter. So the Combi rep had one rule. We weren't allowed to take his Porsche out that he had in the garage, but he was never around. I can't remember where he lived, like California or something. So he had a house in Salida, a house in California. But he was never around. We took the Porsche out maybe once or twice. But anyway, Kurt and I, we were working at the ski area. We were having a great time. We met some girls we started seeing, Sarah and Logan. They both worked with us in the children's ski school there. And then there was other girls, Carla, and I can't remember the two sisters we met. But, we were having a great time living in this house, working at the ski area. We're going to the hot springs all the time with these girls. There's a bunch of hot springs around there. But that only lasted so long. So our next move was to rent a place somewhere in the area to get us through the winter. So Kurt found this place up in Buena Vista, 30 miles up the Arkansas Valley, in a trailer park called Johnson's Village, which was a trailer. And, it cost $400 a month. So once we had to get out of the Combi rep's house, we moved into the trailer. It was still winter. I can't remember the exact reason we had to leave the Combi rep's house. I think he wanted to move back into it full time. But anyway, we move up to Buena Vista to this trailer. My first time living in a trailer park. I don't know, whoever has experience with that, what that's like. I mean, there was drug addicts, families, crazy people, retired people in the trailer park. It was just this eclectic bunch of lunatics lived in the trailer park. But we were fine with that. The thing was, we were working at the ski area, and at the ski area at the time, you got paid for the lessons you taught. So some days we'd go into work, we'd be there for 8 to 10 hours, and we'd teach 2 lessons. And I think we were making $6 an hour or something at the time. So we weren't really making enough money. Yes, our rent was only $400, but food was an issue for sure. We ate top ramen like every single day, top ramen for breakfast, top ramen for lunch. I'm sure our nutrition was not good. We did get some food, we fed the kids at the ski school, so we got to eat some of that, hot dogs and stuff. Not really much better food. So we're living at the trailer park, and the rent started to catch up with us. Kurt came up with a great idea. Let's go get food stamps. So we went down to the community center in Buena Vista, and we got food stamps. And I'll never forget, it took about a month to get them, but those first food stamps we got like $100 each a month, which to us was like so much money. with our first food stamps, we went to the supermarket and we bought, I think we spent all the money on ice cream and steaks because we hadn't eaten meat in so long, and ice cream is ice cream. And we ate so much for a few days on those food stamps. That was great. That only lasted so long. The winter was coming to an end. I had a side gig babysitting for one of the ladies who worked at the ski area, her two sons. I'd babysit for them once a week when her husband her went out on date night or did whatever on Saturday nights. Kurt was doing whatever, I can't remember at the time. So anyway, we started seeing these girls. I started seeing this girl Logan. He started seeing this girl Sarah. They were friends. We were working with them, partying with them. Logan was beautiful. She was a barrel rider, great body, blonde, 5'8", 5'9". She was my height or a little taller. She was the first girl I ever had been with. I've been with quite a few girls, not quite a few, but plenty in high school before that. But it had been a few years since I broke up with my long-term relationship, since I had a girl interested. You know how guys are at that age, 18, 19, you're all awkward and stuff. You go into bars and you occasionally hook up. But I didn't have a relationship. So I started seeing Logan, and I mean, she was the first nymphomaniac I was ever with. She would like to have sex like 6 times a night. She was crazy. The thing with her was her mom was one of my supervisors at work, and when her mom found out we were seeing each other, I was 21 or 22 at the time, her mom sits me down one day at work and she's like, "Hey, I understand you're seeing Logan." I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "How old did she tell you she was?" I'm like, "She said she was 19. Everybody just kind of knew she was 19. And her mom goes to me, "She's 16 years old.
I'm going to jail."
And that scared the crap out of me. I thought I was going to jail for sure. I broke up with her right away, and it turned out she was like quite the girl. She had an affair already with one of my other friends from school who was also around my age. Then after me, she dated a 45-year-old man who owned the bar in Salida called the Vic, one of the most popular bars. But anyway, that really scared me. I thought I was for sure going to jail. For a couple of weeks there, I was shaking in my boots. Anyway, time goes on. We're hanging out with these other girls. Sarah and Kurt didn't work out. We're up in Buena Vista now, 30 miles away. The ski area is coming to an end. We don't know what we're going to do next. I didn't want to go back to New York. Kurt was from Minnesota. He didn't know what he was going to do. But we had to move out of the trailer because we couldn't afford the rent anymore. So the plan we come up with is April 1st, we're going to move into the Mosquito Range, into the mountains. This was also Kurt's plan. He was quite an adventurous kid. We went to the trailhead in Buena Vista, bought a tent. I remember it was my first tent, probably, a Sierra Designs tent. And come April 1st, we scouted out all the area on the BLM land, which is the Bureau of Land Management, which consequentially I've been working for the BLM for 10 years now, but I had no idea who the BLM was then. And it turns out on BLM land, you could stay for 14 days, camp in one spot, and then you have to move. But we found this spot we call the Rocks, which I think people still, local raft guides and stuff still go up there on the 4th of July and stuff. It's a great viewing of the Arkansas Valley and Mount Princeton across the valley. So anyway, we scouted it out. We found this spot we called the Rocks. It was almost like a castle, like surrounded by rocks with some flat land, like the rook in a game of chess. I don't know what you call it on a castle, but that's kind of what it was like, a high point. And we set up our tent there. We had a dog too at the time that we adopted from somewhere. I can't remember where. But yes, me and Kurt were living in one tent in the mountains. We moved out April 1st. We moved up to the mountains. We were hauling our food back and forth. It was a 2-mile walk to town. We would take a backpack, one of us or both of us, depending on what we were doing, whether we were working or not, go fill it up with food at the city market in Buena Vista, and then hike back up to the tent. I remember eating lots of junk food at the time, cookies. We had to hang it all in the tree because of bears and stuff like that. But I mean, it was a great time in my life. We had a great time. So anyway, the ski area was coming to an end, and we didn't know what we were going to do next. Our supervisor, like I said, Logan's mom was our assistant supervisor, but our supervisor was this guy named Bill Block, and he owned this rafting company called Independent Whitewater in the Arkansas. And he asked us, "What are you guys doing for the summer?" And we're like, "We have no idea." And he's like, "Have you guys ever thought about being whitewater raft guides?" And we were like, "No, not really." I was like, "I've been rafting once on the Delaware back home with my friends. One time we drove up there for the weekend, but I have no idea what I'm doing." So he's like, "If you guys want a job, you could come to my training. You know, training costs money. You had to pay to train. But if you guys want, I know you broke, I'll let you work it off." So we said, okay. So I went home. I remember my mom bought me a plane ticket to come home that spring for a visit, and she was really trying to petition me to move back home, but I wasn't having any of it. I was having a great time in Colorado, even though I was broke, fending for myself completely, hardly eating anything. I was still having the time of my life out there. So I went home for a week, visited with everybody, that kind of thing. Came back, and I come back to find that Kurt's sister had mysteriously, his sister was 22, just a few years older than him. She had a mysterious illness and died out of nowhere, and Kurt took the dog, went back home to Minnesota, and I never saw him again in my life. Till this day, I've never seen Kurt again. We had this year-long partnership, platonic, of course, but we were good friends. We were, together for a year, lived together, but I've never seen him again. I'm still not sure what I'm going to do, but I know that training starts in another week for whitewater rafting. I get in touch with Bill Block. I say, yeah, let's go. So the training, you're probably not familiar for a whitewater company. Sometimes it's 4 to 6 weeks on the Arkansas River in the case of the Arkansas, where you're going to be working. Bill Block's first week of training is going down the San Juan River in southwest Colorado and having kind of a bonding thing with the new guides and the old guides. And it's a crazy trip, and there's a lot to tell about it. So I'll start my next edition with that.
The end.